We're in this major transition, but if I didn't know astrology, I would just think everything was wrong. But it's completely predictable. It's the season for your soul to want to evolve, or you wouldn't be listening. Astrology is the oldest science on Earth. It was given to us as a blueprint for us to understand the human condition. The Piscean Age, which was a long era that was saying sacrifice yourself, follow the leader. And then Aquarius came in and said, don't tell me what to do. And that's the era we're in. Circumstances are put in place by a divine order. What lives in the unconscious right now is I'm scared. I don't know what my children's future will be. We're at a very significant transition. Egos have gone mad because we're scared at the unconscious level unless you know what to trust. Astrology is a science. It's all based on astronomy. We know today exactly where the sun is and exactly where the moon is, what degree. It never ever deviates. The worst thing that could happen when you die is you feel like you didn't fulfill your purpose. So it's said. So how do you find out what you came to do? I'm going to tell you a secret that I probably haven't said before. Astrology is the oldest science on Earth. It's been here in the Egyptians, the Mesopotamians, before we actually understood consciousness. It was landed and given to us as a template or a blueprint for us to understand the human condition. So for those of you that don't know, I have a master's in clinical psychology. So my entrance of my whole fascination was always the same. What is it with these weird humans? Like, why do we do that? Was my first question in graduate school. I raised my hand. I was like, I have the funniest question. Why don't we do what's healthy? Like, why don't we eat the good food? Why don't we exercise? Why don't we quit the job? Why don't we end the road? What is the component in the human condition that has us so, it's not nice to say, but kind of dumb? I have this term about wisdom. Half of us is very wise, and half of us is just dumb. It's okay to say, because that's the nature of wisdom. You have to know what you don't know. So astrology is a language to put words to the things that we can't articulate. So, for example, I look at your chart and I go, wow, we have a guy here with Mars in Aries and Venus in Leo and Jupiter in Gemini. You're so fun. Your chart is all built for stimulation. If I saw your chart and your mom was here, you were little, I would say to her, he's going to be the goody-goody for about 10 minutes. And then when you're not looking, he'll be wild. And if you think for 1 minute what he appears is what he is, it's not true. So be careful, because when he's behind closed doors, he's the one instigating crazy, but then he looks normal and kind and sweet and gentle when you look back at him. It's true, isn't it? You were so well disguised.
I mean, I got to maintain the disguise, so I'm not answering that question.
So these are the kinds of things. You look at a chart and you get a template or a blueprint of somebody's psychology, and the parent, starting with the parent, understands that child in a way that they would never have been able to give permission. Like this kid, when you look at Amrit, he has to talk. He has to say out loud all of his process. If you tell, even though he's a private person, he's got a lot of secrets and he loves to live inside of himself, he has to articulate with somebody, and hopefully it's going to be his best friend or his mom or his wife or someone, or it could be the dog, but someone needs to hear you. Oh, that's right. He's got a podcast that's been going on every week for, oh my goodness.
Thank you guys.
8
you
years.
guys are putting up with listening to me.
But that's because you're built for the job. And so for those of you watching, some of you don't know what you're built for, and you're in the wrong direction, and you can't figure out the nature of your instincts, even though they're screaming at you through ill health, through being depressed, through being addicted, through being distracted. That's because you didn't find your niche. And what does astrology do? It describes and articulates in distinctions what is your personality type. That starts with the human, but imagine understanding the collective. So we're in this major transition, but if I didn't know astrology, I would just think everything was wrong. But it's completely predictable. And everyone listening right now, you were all born for this. You actually knew you were coming into this birthing. This is a very specific threshold, and it's thin, it's narrow, and everything looks wrong while we're in the middle of it. But I promise we are all genuinely midwives for the next generation of what's about to happen for our children's children. But if you didn't know, if I didn't know astrology, I would be like, first of all, I would think I was nuts. Let's start there. I wouldn't understand me because I'm such a mixed bag. And then second of all, I would have looked at the planet and gone, something is really off, or so it appears. But it's not, said the astrologer. And you were born for these times, and it's exactly as it should be.
Is it a time of growing pains? Because when you say everything's kind of going wrong, like, yeah. But if you
read the news every day. I just read about Korea, or you read about Palestine, or you read about Ukraine, or you read about Africa. I mean, it's the difference is there's 8 billion people here. We've never had this many feet on this ground eating all the food and putting out the plastic and flying around. It's never happened that there's so much going on. So, yes, there's a lot going on. And then there's some critical moments. If you imagined a woman giving birth and you'd never seen it before, you wouldn't be asking me, are we going through strange times? You'd be looking at her going, what is happening right now? You wouldn't ask me that question. You'd be like, and now she's screaming. It was bad enough the last 9 months, this thing was growing on her, but now she's in so loud. And that's where we are. We're so loud right now. There's so much. And if you're a midwife, you sit in the room, you go, excuse me, take a breath. It's okay. We were born for these. We knew she was going to give birth. If we were a midwife, this is what astrology provides. If you have information, but if you didn't know and you were in the room watching your wife give birth, you would think this is the worst moment of her whole life.
What I'm
True,
hearing in
isn't it?
there, yeah, absolutely. What I'm hearing in there is it's providing more context and a different perspective.
Wisdom. It's the wizards and the old souls and the ones that are watching this who are fascinated by you because you bring to us the teachers. They're the ones that are going, I have a funny feeling something's wrong and something's right. It's such a confusing, it's so funny.
Totally feels very present to the paradox these days recently. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Permission to be confused, you guys. Don't feel bad if you're so done with the old society and you don't want to follow the old rules and you're done with the structures of marriage or children or jobs or staying at the same place and not moving or old traditional relationships or all that stuff is we're in the Aquarian age. I think you probably have heard this from other guests.
Yeah. Tell us more about your take on it.
I'm going to say every 20,000 years. It's hard to delineate the actual date, but in 1960s, we entered into the Aquarian Age. This is my theory. There were 6 planets in Aquarius in the 1960s. Very unusual. It entered a frequency that said, don't follow. Don't do what your parents did. You don't have to stay in that old story. Throw away your bra. Don't get married. Give your house. Take drugs. Who's heard of that before? Take drugs and go to the alternate world. Okay, we all said dun 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 dun. Everybody went loop de loo. Remember? I was there because I'm older than I look. So that era entered into what was once the Piscean age, which was a long era starting with Jesus that was saying sacrifice yourself, follow the leader, do what the Bible told you to do. Don't go out of the box. Everybody chant this chant and everybody eat this food. And then all of a sudden the 60s came and went, white bread? Ew, I'm not eating white bread. Ooh, I'm not eating meat. Ooh, I'm not going to follow the leader. Ooh, I can't do the school university thing. I don't want it. All of those questions for the first time in our history of mankind as we know it was the rebel entered the story that said, excuse me, I need a podcast because I can't figure this out.
That's profound. And there's also this what I keep hearing about the Aquarian Age is this concept of like there's more we than I, or there's more we than me.
That's
how
100% true. The Aquarius, if you know astrology, Pisces is the sign that represented Jesus. It's sacrificed.
Yeah, because in
It's the
Christian symbology, there's a lot of fish, but we don't normally notice that unless
exactly.
someone like you mentions it. I've noticed.
Exactly. It was a symbol of fish, and it was all about sacrifice. Like he, in the tarot deck, there's the hanged man as the symbol of Neptune, of what he represented, which was turn the world upside down, give it all to God. I love this. I love Christ. Give it all to God and let it be. The Aquarian Age went, don't tell me what to do.
Right.
That's the individuality. And then the Aquarian Age went, uh-oh, there's so many of my family members who are homeless, who are hungry, who are suffering, who are depressed, who are addicted. Maybe we could talk about how we could help all of us instead of it just being about me.
Wow, sounds like a really profound shift. I can't help but wonder because like I can see the cycles in nature. Like we go from summer to what do we go to? Autumn, then winter, then spring. We go make our way around, and you can see how there's like a bounty in the land, and there's a connection that we build. And it's interesting that like in the stars and galactically, like you said it before we even started the podcast, that this is a universal language. I'd love for you to unpack that a little bit, but also like the one does wonder about the purpose of these cycles and what they're here to enrich, because I can see things growing in and out of the soil with the seasons that we see on the earth. But astrology, these cycles, is there a
Your
purpose?
podcast is called Evolution. The purpose of being here, the word love backwards spells evolve. The whole point of being here is to evolve. The whole point of love is to take you into such a heartfelt space that it lifts you up and you evolve to the next level. You just look how happy he is. You're Jupiter's in Gemini. You love this little funny little quirks. I'm very good at this. Yeah, I have quite a few of those little quirks. Like wisdom, which is why I have an owl on my shoulder. Whiz and dumb. The same. So there's a lot of tickly little moments we're going to have on this podcast, you guys, because his Jupiter is sitting on my son. He has Jupiter in Gemini. I am a Gemini, so I light up Jupiter's humor. It's fun. It's the sage. It's the seeker, and he loves this stuff. So
play me like a piccolo.
That's right. Honestly, there's something true about that. So the cycles that go, it's a spiral. It's not flat. It's not a circle like this astrology. Everything is moving in a spiral. And evolution requires repetitive behaviors again and again and again until they're dated. Okay. And we are dated. We are a whole system. This is my new book. The evolutionary processes, our operating system that the humans have been working with, does not serve the we. To your point, the collective is being sacrificed. We don't think about the effect of the plastic every day we throw it out into it doesn't occur to us that our children have a future. I mean, I don't know, but the Aquarians, they really care about that. Mm. So, and this is your midheaven, your career, the top of your chart when you were born, right above your mother's head, was the constellation Aquarius. So that tells me what your career is about, which is for you, Aquarius, as we just said, is the evolutionary influence. It says, don't just think about your own little ego. Think about all of us. Think about the nature of this reality. Take your heart. Pat, the ego is so distracting. I mean, I have one. I don't know about you, but I got a little earrings
on. Sometimes I feel like I got 1.5, but anyway.
I think everyone is guilty of having 1.5 egos. And that part of the mind, the ego is ruled by Mercury, and it's the part of the Mercury is the mind, and the mind is built to distract us constantly. I always wonder who pays that guy. He talks shit about you. He works all night. He talks about you when no one's looking. He looks in the mirror and says shit about you. The guy's not very nice. That's your ego. Evading God's oneness.
I love that.
The flip side of evading God's oneness is your ego goes, hold on a minute. I'm going towards my soul, the source of unconditional love. Let me find my soul. Let me put my ego, who's evading God, over there in its seat. You got to have one. Your little outfit's so cute and you're so cute. We can't live without an ego. You can't get to the bank and put your money in the account without your little number. However, if the ego is serving the soul, the source of unconditional love, if I can inspire you through an astrology class to remember why you came and activate your soul, you know, in your case, it's Taurus, it's the turtle, it's slow, it's gentle, it's very calm. It's different than all your excitement. Your soul is steady Eddie, kind of boring. You know, just repetitive.
I can feel that. It's, yeah, not fazed by much, but also not.
It's like a tree.
Like, what'll be.
Thank God you're Taurus rising. That really gives you the gift. Your rising sign, it's called the rising sign or the ascendant. We're talking about evolution. You guys don't know this. Go straight to your rising sign to understand what your evolutionary quest is. And yours is Taurus. Like, even though your personality, you've got all this Gemini and Aries and Leo, and you're such an entertainment unit, your soul is like, can everyone leave me alone? I just want quiet and the same food. And my same little, you like repetitive things to give you comfort. Is that true or is that true?
Well, yeah, we've been doing a podcast every week for the last 10 years, and now we do like two for the last. And I jokingly say this podcast is part of my mental health strategy.
But that is so true. You're so right. Repetitive, consistent behavior is your medicine.
Yeah, totally. I totally relate, and yeah, even there's some qualities of Taurus that I like, even just like creature comfort, stuff like that, like just, you know, the little things that people don't notice.
Feelings, textures of clothes. Yes.
They matter. They matter to me.
You. So this is the
Yeah.
answer to your question. What is astrology but me describing your essence on your terms, like we do for a child at best? We look at our child's chart and we go, oh, this child doesn't like to talk, but that child can't stop. And how important it is as the mother, as the father, to say, you don't have to talk, and go ahead, tell me every thought you're having. So there's distinctions in personality. That's what the function of astrology in the name of evolution is. If I understand myself, I mean, what a nice thought. If I really have a relationship with my nature to start with, then to your point, what you said before the show started, you'll find your niche, you'll find your passion, you'll be authentically embodied. But if I'm shapeshifting to accommodate, which is what the Piscean age was, in the Piscean age, you had to get married, you had to have kids, you had to live where your family lived. You couldn't leave the town that your family lived in, or you would have no source of food because you would have been banished. And when you went to the next village, they're like, why are you here? You couldn't pick your wife.
I'm from India. We still can't. No, I'm kidding.
No, that's real. That's the Piscean age is India, the caste system, the hierarchy put in place by someone we don't even know who. And then Aquarius came in and said, "Don't tell me what to do." And that's the era we're in.
You inspired soul. Just want to take a quick second to thank all of you that are subscribed to the channel. Thank you so much for your incredible love and support. And to all of you that haven't yet subscribed, please do take a moment. As I'm saying subscribe, the button below is lighting up. That is the subscribe button in the colors of the Inspired Evolution. Please click that button, hit that bell notification icon. And everything we do around here is powered and empowered by your subscription to the channel. So please do take the time, take the moment. It helps with everything we're doing around here, championing love, positivity, and wisdom around the world. Thank you so much for your incredible love and support in advance. Back to today's episode with Debra Silverman. It's really awesome to sort of see how much awareness we can decode about ourselves. And I'm already just picturing, like, if I knew more about like my wife, my sons, like I could, interact with them, hold space for them better, and just, my relationship dynamics would be improved. Well, not that they're bad, but they could improve significantly.
Totally. Such a beautiful thought.
And one of the things I'm noticing, as you said, I couldn't help but feel like, because I've done the Myers-Briggs personality test, and we've got all these different types of personality tests, and I'm just like, and I think most people tuning into this podcast have like a sort of an itch to scratch, like, who am I? Like, let me just do a personality test on that. But it's just like, this is like an ancient tool to like understand yourself, which goes way deeper and is way more individualized for the person.
Every system, from the human design to gene keys to the Enneagram to the Myers-Briggs. Myers-Briggs is based in the 4 personality types. It's all astrology. The mothership of all those systems.
Astrology.
Raise your hand if you know where the mothership is.
Well, I'm learning.
I've done this for almost 50 years, and I'm telling you, the system of astrology allows the parenting and the marriage. Like, it's so exciting to think about the future because we're turning a corner, even though it's really uncomfortable. And on the other side, you can be sure that astrology will be returned to its right place.
Do you see it being understood more, one thing, but taught more, another thing?
Yes, I have a school. I don't know if you know that. Twice a year, we have thousands of people that come from around the world. They do a one class with only 10 people in the room, and your chart comes on the screen. And you spend all the time studying your chart because we all have an ego. Oh, I remember that part. Everybody raise your hand if you have an ego. Everybody's raising their hand. So the chart is the doorway in as an ego. But then when you get to the rising sign, like your Taurus, I'm sure your wife knows this. You're a sensual sensitive. You've got to be touched. We would never know that. Your whole system's based on yum yum and cuddles and being able to feel connected to those few people. And if you didn't have that, you'd be like a fish out of water. It's true. You require physical consistency. Not everyone needs that. Some people live in their heads, and their job is to be intellects and researchers, and they really collect numbers, and they don't care about touch. It's offensive to them. Get off me. You're like, please, just cuddle me.
Sounds like my wife has the same, probably has the same sign.
Exactly, and that's compatibility. To your point, I would be understanding my wife if I knew what her nature was. And yes, People that are similar definitely are drawn together, and people that are opposite are originally attracted, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, interesting about the attraction and repulsion. So, because everybody carries their own chart, and interpersonal dynamics can be such a thing to navigate in so many ways. Are there just some people that you're just better off sort of keeping at arm's length? There are certain people that you're meant to be working with and stuff like that. Is that worth
I
analyzing?
have a company with 50 women, and I know every single one of their charts. I wouldn't
Mm,
hire anybody. I have a brilliant CEO, and she's now fully committed to astrology, and she won't hire anyone without seeing their chart.
mm,
I mean,
mm.
think about it. We now know your skill set. You might be in the wrong seat. I want you to be in the seat where your best qualities show up because it's so instinctual and you're being yourself and you're so good at it.
So at this particular point in the conversation, that sounds like we're so programmed from the outset when we're born. Like, because when we're born, we've got this constellation that's present, and that sort of time frame of like, obviously, it places a lot of importance on an individual's birth, first of all. But second of all, it really opens up this can of worms around destiny, preordained, free will. Like, yeah, your thoughts in this space? Because definitely you've
You're
contemplated this
such
for a minute.
you have Moon in Scorpio. You go so deep, which is why your podcast. You have 3 planets in the house of Scorpio. You're a deep soul. Great question. Destiny and free will. I love the line that's written in the stars. There are things that are put in place that you can't negotiate. You're going to get that dog when you're a kid. Those were the parents that were assigned to you. That was your brother, and here comes your wife, and that's your kid. That's written in the stars. That's not a decision. You didn't choose that. People, I hate when they say, I chose my parents. I was like, was I on drugs? Why would I have done that? No, that was an assignment that was given to me based on karma at a higher intelligence, and it didn't have a lot to do with my little mind because I would have been like, no. So there's an assignment given to you. It's written in the stars. The free will button is you could choose to wear the little outfit you have on. You can choose what you're going to have for breakfast. You can choose whether or not you're going to buy that car. Those are simple options that your free will, ego, taste buds get to choose. But you didn't get a vote about your mom and dad and about the kids that were in your neighborhood and who was going to break your heart and your wife and how you were going to meet her. That's kismet. Those are written in the stars. And by the way, just so you all know, you are being watched. There's an organization going on far beyond your mind. Any astrologer will say in full conviction that God, Einstein said it better than me. God is not playing with dice. It's not random. There's an order. Now, the free will button, you can end the relationship, you can quit that job, you can say no to your sister, you can change yourself in your city. All that is the free will zone. Welcome to the Aquarian Age. We have now entered the free will zone. It's little, but there is some freedom inside the story. And this podcast and you guys listening to these spiritual conversations, they're activating a part inside of you that was latent. Like I always did believe in astrology, but I didn't believe in it. But I've always felt like the stars were so magic. But I don't know what that's calling you. But until the moment comes that you would meet me and you would be here on this podcast, the Inspired Evolution podcast, it just was a random thought floating in the back room. Then Kismet, design, order, and then the free will button is will you follow through? And that's evolution. Evolution is the free will button that says, I'm going to choose the high road. I'm going to do the disciplinarian path. I'm going to actually learn meditation, chanting, yoga. That's a decision. So there's the free will. I'm going to be disciplined. That doesn't come naturally.
It's really interesting because I went into a meditative state some time ago, and one of the things that happened there was I came back with this download touch with that I just viscerally could feel it in all of my cells that there was no quinky dinks, there was no coincidences. Like I just as of that point coming back, it was just like coincidences. I can't believe in them anymore. Like everything, like absolutely everything, every single moment is stacked on the last moment. And in fact, yeah, we can talk more about how humans perceive time because that could be a useful conversation. Like it was just, yeah, like my consciousness is just working in linear fashion to stitch together a story so I could have an experience. But even time is open to question in that space. But it was just I can't believe in and it was really trippy because I came back and I was like, that's really hard to integrate because then
Do you
it
think it's a
makes
coincidence that your dog is barking?
Don't draw attention to her.
But that's where it gets a little bit for me. That sentence that you had, that everything is like, that was a really good moment. Thank you. What's your puppy's name?
Her name's Gaia.
Gaia?
Yeah.
So beautiful. So she entered and we got the conversation shifted. And was that meant to be? And is this conversation about free will? Yes. Circumstances are put in place by a divine order. I am a geek when it comes to modern physics and understanding science, because as an astrologer, it's all based on astronomy. Astrology is a science. It's not like the gene keys was channeled, the human design was channeled, all these systems came through modern days. But the ancient resource that has been put in place 3,000 years ago with an airtight system that never changes. Talked about Taurus rising. We know today exactly where the sun is, what degree, and exactly where the moon is, what degree. It never ever deviates. There's no, even when Mercury goes retrograde, we know when it will go retrograde. We know how far it will go retrograde. It's an airtight, you guys, you can trust the stars. The free will button is your own mind's ability to make the proper choice that's going to serve your higher self. That's what inspired evolution means. I'm going to choose to do the next right thing. But you don't have to.
It's interesting because I've contemplated free will quite a bit for a minute. And one of the things that's popped through for me is similar to what you're saying. And I'm just sort of double clicking on it is I may not really have the choice of what I'm here to do or what I show up for. But what I do have the choice is completely around how I show up for said thing.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big slice of the donut to huff down in one go, though. It's a lot to digest. I hope you can appreciate for those that are listening in.
Slice of the donut. So for anyone watching this, you watch podcasts, you listen to podcasts to be inspired to new thought. So you can inspire your evolution to consider a larger picture that won't let your ego take over your life. Because the dilemma with the ego is it really does evade God's oneness. It doesn't want to participate in any other way than to get attention and to be noticed and to be approved of and to be able to be loved and to look cute and to buy the cars. And all the ego is so busy. And it has such ambition. Even when you're down, your ego's attacking you. That's what I mean by who pays that guy? I mean, think about it. The mental constructs that live in our operating system the first stop is your ego. And it's not interested in evolution. It's interested in security and safety and maintaining status quo. Mine, 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 mine. Isn't that crazy? And the soul, who is the rising sign, which is what you're asking about, this is what I want to say to you, the people in this room, in this audience. It's the season for your soul to want to evolve, or you wouldn't be listening. There's a free will button coming closer and closer at your house. Are you going to choose to take the high road? And what will it take? Will you be inspired by Amrit? Will you be inspired by Debra? Like, could I give you encouragement to say that the whole planet's depending on you? Because as many people as we can get through this threshold with kindness, mindfulness, love, it's going to make this transition. Think if you were a woman giving birth, who do you want in the room?
The doulas and the midwives.
The wise ones.
Qualities.
Who can sit quietly and trust. The one that knows how to jump up and get what it needs. There's all different personality types that are required in that room, but they're not worrying. They're not having negative internal dialogue. If I had a function for my career this life as an astrologer, it's to help you fall in love with yourself.
Hi there, guys. I wanted to take a quick moment just to introduce you to my one-to-one coaching. It's something that I deeply love doing. As you can tell, conscious conversation is such a massive part of my life. And having one-to-one deep, meaningful conversations with people where I get to show up as your brother or as the coach or as your mentor, has been such a gift for me personally, and a gift for lots of the people that I have supported on the journey of living a more spiritually empowered, spiritually powered, spiritually aligned life. You don't have to take my word for it. Here's some examples of people all around the world that have experienced profound transformations through this coaching experience.
Amrit is a fantastic coach.
In a few sessions, he got to a depth that I'd only experienced before working with certain medicines. And
he's gone through a lot of the struggles that you're probably facing, and Amrit's been a really strong, supportive figure in my journey.
In control of myself.
I'm kinder to myself.
I actually have that vision and a purpose.
I do feel like I'm a better version of myself already.
Amazing energy.
He was easy to talk to, which made me easy to trust him.
Working with Amrit at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and really I was bouncing out of bed.
Whenever I get off the calls with Amrit, best money we've ever spent.
I would not recommend him because I don't want everyone to know about him, and then I won't be able to book him. If he gets too busy, I won't get my turn.
I would say absolutely.
There's no way you can work with Amrit for a period of time without being transformed.
So if you're considering him as a coach, do not hesitate, because you won't be disappointed.
Alrighty, so hopefully that's inspiring your evolution onwards and upwards. And if you are so inspired to evolve, you can book in a one-to-one call with me directly at www.amrit.coach/life. And guys, if I can say so myself, I do think this is something quite special. Most people that I see building things online don't really work with people this deeply, this intimately, one-on-one as things start to grow, just because it is so time intensive. And yet I'm so deeply passionate about the transformation that comes from one-to-one coaching that just isn't available anywhere else. It would be my absolute honor and a pleasure to support your spiritual awakening, your spiritual path, your spiritual unfoldment. It is my life's work. I look forward to seeing you in the call. Back to today's podcast. Do you ever sit with your own chart and do you still learn things from your own chart now, or are you still?
I do. And I find it really funny because there's this thing called the progressed moon. It's just one small, teeny piece of the astrology. And it changes every 2.5 years. And mine just changed. So I'm in this moment where I can feel my chart going, whoop, whoop, and I'm noticing back to the free will question. I'm like, wow. This is the wildest thing. It's almost like I have no free will. Suddenly mine's in Libra. And I'm obsessed right now with science, which is, people don't tell you Libra. You have this in your chart, Mercury and Libra. Loving to discover the relationship things have and being fascinated. So I'm at the moment, I mean, you probably know the Diary of a CEO. I've never listened.
Stephen Bartlett, legend.
I mean, the level of, I listened to some scientists yesterday. I caught myself and I was like, Deborah, you are now an hour and a half in. I never did this before. I was on podcasts, but now I'm obsessed with collecting information and researching and partnering with people and collaborating. And I just, so to your point, yes, my chart changed. I can't help it. I noticed it and it's operative. When my first progressed moon, I remember this, it moved into Cancer. This was probably like 8 years ago. And I got in the car and I was driving I live in Hawaii in the winter, to a furniture store. And I'd never been to a furniture store my whole life. And Cancers love their home. And as I was driving, it had just shifted. It was like similar to now. And I was like, are you driving to a furniture store and your progressed moon just went into Cancer and you're about to buy furniture for the first, that's where I'm out of the free will zone. I'm in the car driving to the furniture store. Oh, well. And this is the gift of being in the flow with the cosmic influence that lets me know I'm in evolutionary flow. And thank you, life, for paying such close attention to every single human. That there is a pattern and a rhythm and a design and destiny for everybody listening. What are you writing down?
Just, I get 6 thoughts in my head as you're talking, and then I'm like, oh, not gotta forget that one.
Yeah, okay, I love that.
One of the notes I wrote down was disconcerting, because I think when we go through challenging shifts, when there's no context, I see this a lot as a coach, helping people sort of say, hey, I've seen this pattern play out for many other people before, and just providing a little bit of context for people can soften and relax, and their shoulders come undone, and they're like, okay, cool. This is just part of a process. I'm going somewhere. And so I think even just asking about your own chart, and like you said, I can feel it shifting, but also watching you kind of lean in as opposed to kind of like hold on tight to what was. I would love to highlight that a little bit because it can
Wow.
be really helpful when you're shifting, right? To have this context, because otherwise you cause yourself a lot, like the gripping can be really.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think 'cause I'm turning 70 in a couple of years and people are always shocked because I
You
look so
are
young.
what?
Yeah.
Also
And
your personality.
but part of it is because of this very reason. I lean in. And I'm going to tell you a secret that I probably haven't said before. I know that I'm totally out of control. I know that I figured out that my mind thought she had an order and organization to my life. I have children and I married and my husband died. I had a whole movie going. And then I realized one day when he got so sick, I thought, I am totally out of control. Where I really got it was giving birth. That's when I realized, oh my God, I am so out of control right now. Life is using me. You can use that premise. Life is using you. And the sooner you take your hands off the wheel, but you listen to the directions. So they told me to write a book. I was like, no, I didn't want to write the book. And then I heard it again. Right, you're writing a new book. I was like, no. That was my ego, to your point, not leaning in.
Yeah.
Total resistance. I did not want to write a book. And then the message came in so loud and so clear. And I said, here's the conditions. If you make it irresistible and fun, I'll do it.
That's a cool way to play.
So you hear the message. First things first, you've got to get this, you guys. You lose control. You don't lose control. You recognize that life is using you to have an Amrit experience. They created a chart and a story with your wife and the son. They did a lot of effort went into your personal karma. Thank you, life. And then you let go of control because you realize, wow, they know me better than me. They picked those crazy parents. They gave me this crazy, okay, I'm going to trust them. And that's what astrology has done for me. I totally trust that the sun and the moon and Mercury and Venus and Mars and Saturn, Neptune, they move in perfect increments and they never deviate. Think about that. Across all time. Therefore, I can trust. This is Taurus rising. I'm talking straight to you. The solid, trustworthy things in life that never ever deviate, like rocks and trees and mountains, that's what the stars are. And so it's given me a gift of trust to know that I'm out of control. It sounds funny. And that I can listen. And when I get the directive from the download, from the intuition, from the meditation, from the walk, not everybody meditates sitting still. Some people need to swim. Some people need to laugh and have a little drink, and then they get high, and then they're so out of it the next day, they're like, I'm out for a week. And in that quiet time when they're sober, in come their messages. So there's many ways to get there. When the message comes, the question has to be posed. Here's the free will button coming up. Am I willing to take on the assignment? Because first problem is people think they're in control, and they get stuck to your point on resisting. That's very uncomfortable. It hurts the body, hurts the nervous system, makes you feel like you're stuck. I hate that word. People say it all the time. Why are you thinking you're stuck? Because somewhere you're gripping. And the opposite is you let go of control, you listen, and then you go, oh, you want me to write a book? It better be easy and it better be fun. Okay, go. And then it was amazing. So this free will button is only dependent upon not gripping. The healthy free will button will take you where you need to go, but you can't.
Inspired soul, I'd love to hear from you. What are you taking away from Debra's conversation here today? My goodness, I just love her vibes. I seriously cannot get enough of her. Just the way she weaves astrology and psychology into personal development, self-improvement, and just the perspective gaining that she's harnessed astrology for to help us contextualize our challenges, our gifts. My God, such a blessing. I'd love to hear what you're taking away in today's conversation. Please leave that in the comments below. And she's likely to come back on to give us some predictory stuff, some readings for 2025 and where we're going in January. So if you want to know more about your particular sign or what's coming up, leave that in the comments below as well. Any questions you have for her, and we can ask that of her next time she's on the podcast in a couple of months. And with that, Back to today's episode with Debra. I can see the fingers on the grip being basically the ego as well at this particular juncture in the conversation, because I was going to ask what happens when we don't, like if you didn't write the book, were you always going to write the book, or what happens if you
Oh, no,
didn't
it
write
was
the book?
destiny.
Yeah.
Yeah, good question. Such a great question. Well, you said it before the show started. You were in construction and your body broke. And then you woke up to who you were, and now you're in this fluid movement where the whole world's benefiting because of you. Like you're touching thousands.
Touch wood.
You're really touching thousands and thousands of people with this podcast. So you got the strain of the grip of the construction worker, Taurus rising. I got Earth. I'm a Virgo. I got Earth. And then your soul's like, excuse me. And they usually hurt you. They make you sick. A divorce, depression, addiction. These are all the alarms. And then it's back to your question. If I didn't write the book? Well, I can't even, at this point, of course, I can't imagine. And I'm giving you guys a cheat. At the very end of my book, the very first line of the last page of my last chapter is, I shouldn't be telling this, but I didn't want to do this. But my soul, who's lazy, got pushed around by my ego. Sorry. My ego, who's lazy, got pushed around by my soul. And then I fulfilled my soul's promise. So that's how it went. And I'm so thankful I listened to my soul, even though my ego's lazy.
I love the way you put that. I love the way you put that. Yeah.
It tickled you. I'm so glad it tickled you.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think for some people it is quite disconcerting, this idea of a higher order. Like being invited to lose control. And this idea that they're being watched, as you referred to, these are quite for a certain individual, they can create quite a sinister ring to them,
Yeah, those are called the light forces that look like the dark forces when you scare yourself with them, but they're light. This whole movie is a conspiracy. That's why I don't really like the conspiracy thing, but I like it because I know. I was listening to a podcast yesterday with Steve Barrett, and there was a scientist on, and he was basically challenging. I just love this. Steve just straight up said to him, do you believe in God? And I knew the guy was a Virgo, and I knew he was like you. He had Mercury in Libra. I knew it just intuitively. And this is how he answered. Well, this is Libra. They're scales. He was like, yeah, no. Well, I have a lot. Well, I don't have proof, but I go to synagogue every week, but I don't. It was like watching Libra lifetime. I wanted to scream. And then he went to say, they talked about astrology, and that's when I stopped the podcast. He basically poo-pooed astrology and said it was complete shit. And I was like, excuse me. I'm going to send you a book called I Don't Believe in Astrology, and you better read it.
I can't wait. Actually, at this particular point, the book comes out in April 2025. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. If people want to make sure that they remember to get it, what's the best way to remember to get it?
Just go on Amazon and do a pre-order, or right now it's waiting for you. It's on all the different book lists. They're expecting it to be a bestseller. I don't know how that happens, but you can get it on Amazon at the moment, and you can just Google it, and there'll be a pre-order slip because that really helps me.
I'll put a link in the show notes below. Debra, were you always inclined for astrology? Because also, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but at some point, did you study astrology, or did it just?
I know. This is so Mr. Scorpio Moon. I did a little research, and I'm going to ask a question. Let's see if the answer is I started at a very young age. It's embarrassing. I never had a proper teacher. I never took a class. That's why I teach a university level school. You start in kindergarten when you come to my school.
But I think it's inspiring though, because I think so many of us are conditioned, and maybe this is the Piscean versus the Aquarius, where so many of us are conditioned waiting for that permission slip. I see this as a coach a lot. People are like, oh, how many certifications do I need to get before I become a coach? And it's like, to help people. I mean, yes, there are some that you need, but some of you have a PhD. You've been studying personal development for a long time. Get going. Like the world needs you now or yesterday, please.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think it's really inspiring hearing your story. I don't think sorry if it's making you feel embarrassed, but I think it's actually quite.
I mean, it's come public. I have told people that I I sat in the car for 3 days from Toronto to Alberta in Canada with a woman who was a triple Gemini. She could talk. And she taught me, she was an astrologer, kind of she knew. And so I sat in the car and I just took notes because I'm an auditory learner. So I'm writing and writing. And the second day she was like, Deb, in the back of the car, there's a stack of books all about astrology. Get a book. I was like, no, let's do the same thing again. So then I wrote down everything, the planets, the signs, the houses, and then the third day she was like, I can't talk anymore. I drove her crazy. And when I finished, I had a dream very shortly after. I was living in Toronto. I went back home and I heard in the dream, in no uncertain terms, a lady screaming at me saying, "You've been an astrologer for lifetimes, stupid. Stop acting so dumb." And I woke up. She was screaming at me like this.
Wow.
And then I started charging the next day.
Yeah. Incredible.
So to your point, if you are a natural cook, if you are a natural wisdom keeper, if you're really good at sewing, if you're really good at, you don't need to go get certified. But because coaches, that's we have, if you're a natural at being able to help people, that's what my school. I have trained so many young women and older women that are all ages and men how to do a reading, literally within 2 classes, and they make money doing it because they had a natural fascination with personality types.
Yeah, it's really interesting thinking about how much we get in our own way, leaning into your psychology background there. It seems to be this consistent game of smoke and mirrors that we just can't help but play with each other or with
It's so,
ourselves.
I know, it makes me sad that the nature of the beast is the ego wants to interrupt, dismiss you, judge you, and your soul's just waiting in the wings quietly, going, please just love me and just let me lead you. Let me tell you what to do. I'll promise. I've got a whole host of angels here that work with me. And it's so hard to get there because the system is built to resist the soul. I don't know who made it up, but yeah, when I get home, I think they're not going to want to have me. When I get home, I'm going to go straight to the head office and go, excuse me, what was that about? You put them down there with so little information. You think they're going to get it right with the size of their ego?
Do you look at this particular time as being more ego intensive? Because, well, I've leaning into sort of Vedic astrology a little bit, where they talk about like the different ages and like how we're in the dark age at the moment. We're the furthest that we are from the light as we do the orbit.
That's called the Kali Yuga. That's all based on astrology.
Yeah. And so do you feel like now is probably a time where the ego has more of a grip than ever before kind of vibes?
Well,
Is
think
that kind of
about
link those two things?
think about the Kardashians and think about TikTok and think about every social media platform. And you see everybody dressed up in their cutest little outfits and their bathing suits. You're like, that looks like ego. I don't know. Is that ego? Yes, it's everywhere. And it's a symptom of anything that's about to go gets crazy at the very end. Like we get really scared. Very few people know how to die wisely. And this is the most important transition there could be.
Have
And
you
this
heard
is
of
part,
Stephen Jenkinson? Have you?
of course.
Yeah, we've had him on the podcast a couple of times.
My
He's so epic.
goodness, he's
So
a
sorry.
poet.
As soon as you said that, oh my God, the way he writes. Can he stop? Never stop.
He is, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so beautiful. There's another man called Andrew Holchek, Holec. You definitely should get him on your podcast.
Oh, please,
He
I
is
will.
a Tibetan meditator who specializes in preparing to die and lucid dreaming and being awake inside the dream.
Yeah, I'll get him on.
That's the essence of everything. So how do we get to that? If the ego's about to die in exchange for the soul to take over this planet, if we are actually at the end of an era, as I so strongly feel this, there's an expiration date. It should be no surprise to us that our egos are getting bigger before they leave. Like don't forget about me. Like there's a wild energetic with 8 billion people on the planet that are terrified unconsciously. What lives in the unconscious right now, you're such a deep soul. I can feel you bringing this out of me. What lives in the unconscious right now in the collective zeitgeist is I'm scared. I don't know what my children's future will be. I can't imagine how this climate issue is going to unfold. There's definite war and nuclear thought. There's the word nuclear, contemporary, was presented in 1930 when Pluto arrived. It was the entrance of Pluto, and then suddenly this word called destruction for the whole planet. So these are all indicators that we're at a very significant transition. So to your point, yes, the egos have gone mad because we're scared at the unconscious level unless you know what to trust. Then comes
Which is
another deep breath. The sun's coming up tomorrow. The moon's moving in perfect increments. There's wisdom keepers who have been indigenous who knew this was coming. We're not surprised if you listen deeply and get quiet. There are souls that I learned from Andrew about these old Tibetans who've been living forever and know how to die consciously, and that it's just a dream to a dream. It's not as scary as you think. But without this podcast, without the wisdom being dispersed, without the ego starving, we wouldn't be so interested in the evolution. So there's something to be said about your ego being out of whack, feeling scared. When some client calls me and they say to me, I'm at the worst part of my whole life, I'm like the dark night of the soul. Like I wanted to ask you, what happened in 2025, 26? Sorry, 2015.
I'd love to know
2015.
what happens in 2025, 26.
No, sorry. In
Yeah.
2015, your chart got hit.
2015.
2020, I'm going to say 2016, 2017, somewhere.
That was the birth of the podcast.
Okay, so that's called Saturn return. Have you heard about this before?
Yeah, I have, but I think it'd be really useful for the audience to, because I went through so much in that period
You
that I
went
had
through
to,
the hardest
that I needed,
time.
I needed the context of Saturn's return to be able to navigate through it. And then people were like, it goes on for 3 years, and I was like, make it stop.
It doesn't go on for 3 years. It doesn't go on for 3 years.
Illuminate us about Saturn's return, please, Debra
So
Silverman.
you're a dark soul. I just want to speak to you first because when you said it, I thought that's probably his Saturn return. So it was you changing your career, you getting mentally stretched, you finding your body break. I just had a really sweet friend here yesterday, and she's so in Saturn return. She just broke up with her boyfriend. She was putting all the stuff in storage, and I said, excuse me, do you not know, Debra Silverman, you are smack dab exact degree at Saturn return. She just started to cry. And she was like, make it end. I was like, you just need to pass through this passage. And on the other side came your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I look back at it now and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. But man, it was like forging a sword in fire. Like, not to call myself a sword, that was a bit weird. But do you know what I mean? Like it took some metal.
Right.
It took some metal.
So it's 28 to 30 is the critical moment. You have to call an astrologer to know when it's really hit exact degree. It happens again at 58 to 60, which is when my school started 10 years ago.
Right.
So I didn't see it coming. And that's what I mean by taking your hands off the wheel. During Saturn return, you are out of control.
Is that usually the midlife crisis, 58 to 60?
That's 40. 40 is the midlife.
Okay.
That's Uranus, opposite Uranus. But there's 58 to 60 and 28 to 30. And to your point about the dark soul, dark night of the soul, it's when you have to take your hands off the wheel because you're out of control.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We had Christina Lopez on the podcast, and she goes, I don't like calling it the dark night of the soul. I call it the dark night of the mind because the soul's always in control. And I was like, oh, dude, fucking yes. Like,
I'm stealing that.
I thought that would resonate with you, so I just had to tuck that in there.
Dark night of the soul. It's not the right word. It's a dark night of the say
mind.
It again.
It's the dark night of the mind because the soul's always in control. You know, the soul doesn't go dark. The soul's all light, bro.
I love it so much. So for all of you that are in Saturn return, your soul's in control, and it's going to shock you if you're not willing to let go. If you're in the wrong place, or you'll either your health will go, something will happen to catch your attention, and that's what astrology is for. It's calling an astrologer during Saturn return. And by the way, I don't do readings, so don't call me. But I have 23 certified astrologers, and I do matchmaking. Matchmaker, make me a match. I look at your chart, I look at their chart, and I go, this is the perfect astrologer for you.
Interesting. Because obviously, yeah, there's also that serendipity of like who you're getting connected to get your readings from and the understanding. Yeah, beautiful. I'm nerding out on that. That sounds really dope.
I love your Taurus. I can so feel your Taurus. I just want to speak to this. You have this way of pausing. Most people can't do this. This is Taurus rising. Your soul slows things down and softens the energetics. That's one of your gifts.
Thank you for that reflection.
So true. I'm sure everybody feels it. That's why we love being with you. It's a calming effect. Taurus rising and Sun in Virgo, you're double Earth. So we all get to ground when you're around.
I feel very earthy. Touch wood. It's definitely.
And I'm double air, like blah, blah, blah. Like all I do. Oh my God.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes when I watch those like Lord of the Rings, I'm like, yeah, I want to be an elf, but I'm definitely a dwarf.
So good. Oh, it's the cutest line. That should be you should take that off and put that on your shorts for your video. I want to be an elf, but I really am a dwarf.
Birth chart. We've talked a little bit about dying wise. A trippy question popped in for me is obviously, what can our chart tell us about our moment of transitioning off of the planet as well? Can it sort of tell us a little bit about that? Or is that still meant to be behind the veil? And I've got a few questions around there if you'd like, allow me to rattle them off and then see where the conversation takes us, which is like birth chart, but death chart. Like it'd be really curious to sort of see when people check out, touch wood, or not they check out, well, pardon me for being so flippant about it, but do you know what I mean? Like when that transition happens, it's like, it'd be really interesting to sort of see, this is what brought you in. Have you played that game? Have you?
It's so funny you're asking this because I have a really close friend and we were having dinner one night and he brought this up and said, you should do death charts. And for some reason, I could not stop laughing. It makes me laugh. Well, why am I doing a chart for someone who just died? By the way, everyone's grieving. I'm not looking at, I don't care. Like, so that's one part. That's just what made me laugh so hard.
Yeah,
It's just the
yeah.
funniest. However, I study death. So the preparation, which is far more interesting. And in your chart, you have 3 planets in the house of death and you have 2 planets in Scorpio. This topic is one of your topics. Staying awake inside the death process is the highest sign of what? Evolution. Because the Tibetans at the highest level, including the Dalai Lama, they know where they're going to die. They hand their wisdom to their attendant, who then they say, come meet me. Do you know this? When the Dalai Lama dies, he tells his attendant, in my next life, I'm coming back here, here, and here. My parents are going to have these initials. And then they take them. This is such a crazy story. They go to that district, that area of Tibet. They find the parents that have those initials. They go into their home in the middle of the night. They put on a table their the prayer beads they had in the last life, their spectacles they had in the last life, the books. They have like 6 pairs of the same thing, but only one was the one they had. And the little boy, imagine this, at 4 years old, goes into the room and picks out the prayer beads, the little spectacles, the prayer book, and says, and then they say, you're it. And they take them from the family to the Dalai Lama, and they say, we found him. So they reincarnate consciously, and they go from one state of death conscious. This is the whole bardo. This is the whole practice of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I love your eyes right now. So this is where Andrew will really help you. What you're and all of us long for, but particularly in your chart, is how do I stay awake inside this dream and keep my awareness on so that I don't live in fear, that I do trust, that I do follow my dharma, that I can hear my own voice. How do I do that? And that's where all the Tibetan practices of meditation and chanting. Now, you don't have to be a Tibetan when you grow up, but listening to Andrew, for example, or people that have taught me about this, has given me the gift. I don't know in the stars. I would not be saying that I'm an astrologer that knows about death. I haven't studied it. I think it's so funny. I'm very good at birth. I can look at the chart and tell you the whole preview of where you're going, but I do not look at death. And I think it's funny. Only a Scorpio moon like you would ask that question.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And you said there was heaps of planets in that sort of space.
3 planets in the 8th house and your moon, and you've got a lot. Isn't this true? Haven't you always been interested?
Yeah, well, actually, I don't want to say this on the podcast, which is really interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and unpack it with some vulnerability, which is I have this conscious awareness that, people think that they're dying at some point, but actually we're always dying. Touch wood, which is really unfair to say. I don't like putting that frequency out because it does sound hella dark.
It does not.
But
to me, it's beautiful. This is what's so funny about your chart is the secrets about the secrets. That you just shared a secret because that's what Scorpios are all about. You have 3 planets in the house of Scorpio and you have 2 planets in Scorpio, and they are fascinated by death. It's not morbid. It's not dark. It's beautiful.
Well, I was encouraged by Alan Watts listening to his tapes, and he said the best soil for contemplating life in, the plant of life, the tree of life, is actually to contemplate death. And you might not be ready for it now, but when you finally are ready, embrace, like, that's the nutrient, that's the real fertilizer for living a really good life, is to actually understand death. And bless his cotton socks, that guy.
I loved him.
He lives in my head rent free.
So he should. And so you're going to find out there's teachers who, like Andrew Holchek, who definitely knows this domain brought to us by the Tibetans. And then even in Hawaii, where I live, their version of death is called changing your address. They don't think of it.
Can I just jump in there? Sorry. Sorry, that was such a beautiful point. Sorry, I shouldn't have jumped in. Sorry, please. Hawaiians call death changing the address.
They call it changing your address, yeah. So there's no fear. You're just going somewhere else. But I wanted to hear what you thought. So,
well, back to what we were saying about gripping and releasing. Having just shared that openly and having heard you sort of say, like this like lens on, like death and the dying process and all that sort of stuff. Like, some part of me did and does feel weird for having this. It's not a fascination. It's a contemplation on death.
It's the
but hearing you just say that to me and contextualizing it back to what we were saying before, when you don't have context and perspective, you grip hella hard. It was like, is this right? Is this allowed? And now you've just sort of softened that. And now I can be like, it's part of me makeup. Right. Gee, got it. All right, cool.
I love that you received that. Thank you.
Right,
and this is what happens. This is what happens when you study. If you took the class in the level 1, there's a thing in astrology called a stellium. When there are 3 planets in one spot, like when someone's born, there's a lot, and they're in the house of death. It just sounds funny. And so you'll learn that in the very first class. That will come out as soon as you walked into level 1. When you're sitting in our classroom, they're going to pull up your chart and they're going to say, "Where's the stellium?" Oh, his is in the house.
Does everybody have a stellium?
No, not everybody has one.
Does some people have multiple stelliums?
I do not have one, for example. No, it doesn't. Not everyone, but you really do have an influence. And it's so good to be told, to your point, there's nothing morbid or bad or sad. This is my fascination. And by the way, in spiritual terms, death is the door of evolution. Because imagine, only older people can say this comfortably. I'm preparing for my death. And we can all, you're right, everyone's dying. But as an older person, I can see the light. So I have made a practice of, today's a good day to die. Like, I think about that, and I really stop time and I ask myself, is there anything in my world that I need to complete? I carry this as an ally, this question.
Would you be looking at my natal chart to discern that?
Well, your natal chart has 3 planets in Sag, and 3 planets in the 8th house in Sag.
Give me 2 secs.
Yeah, if you pull up your natal chart, you'll be able to see it immediately.
This is what you're referring to here?
Exactly. See those 3? You got it. And see in the middle, there's a circle. There's numbers. Look in the very middle of the circles, 1 to 12. You're in number 8. You have 3 planets in the number 8 house, and that's the house of Scorpio.
Okay. And Scorpio is associated with death.
Exactly. And then your moon's in Scorpio. You were born with the moon in Scorpio, so it echoes.
Sorry, isn't this the moon? And it's in
That's
7?
right. Yep. But it's in the sign of Scorpio. So there's 3 ingredients in astrology. There's the sign, there's the house, and there's the planet. And so we keep those 3. But so it's confusing, and I don't want to go into it at all. But I want you to know. I want you to know that you'll learn so simple when you come study with us. It's just so simple.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for elucidating that. Appreciate that,
Mr. Deep. I love how deep you are. That makes me so happy. There's nothing in life I'd rather do than penetrate the veneer, the illusion here, and find the means to find peace, because I understand that there's nothing to be afraid of in the dark. Just the absence of light. And as soon as we walked in, the whole place lit up.
I love that. It's super profound.
That's you. Wherever you go, it all lights up.
Touch it with your being kind. So we're talking about conspiracy before, and I remember having gone down some rabbit holes a little bit before, and it was like very blah 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 blah, and you get all scrambled and jumbled and mumbled, and then you're like, which way's up and which way's down, and now my whole worldview, some of it was a pursuit for truth, and now I'm like inside out and back to front, and now I can't discern like humans from alligators. What the hell is going on here? So one of the things that really helped me.
Said.
One of the things that really, like, I went through a 6-month like proper like re-establishing of myself, and I couldn't have done it without earth, fire, wind, and water, and it was super conscious. Like I had to anchor in to that level of, because like it got super neural, super mental, and I was just like, and I was like, what? I can't discern truth from false. It was just so like I was so deep down the rabbit hole.
Wow.
Yeah, like it started quite naively. It was like, well, where does money come from? Why are we all slaving away? And so then it was like that was the rabbit hole. I was like, money. Oh, used to be backed by gold and a dollar. Not anymore. Why not? Oh, now.
I totally
And
understand.
from there, it just like that was one, but then it was just like
Mr.
like,
Virgo.
oh my
Mr. Virgo, I'm
God.
going to analyze Scorpio, the deepest Scorpio deep.
But
I'm going to analyze.
yeah, so but the thing that brought me back was earth, fire, wind, and water. And you talk a lot about this. Like you read so can you tell us about the missing element? And yeah, you're just hearing you share about the elements would be an absolute blessing.
Okay, first let's slow down. I'm always in awe that podcasts go this long. It's not my nature, but I will acknowledge this is very important. And how do you guys watch this long? I hope it's not interesting.
Well, you're interesting. You're interesting, so you're easy to watch.
That's what I thought about you. Okay, there's 4 elements that consist of this reality. You can't create anything without what you just described. You can't figure out this reality. The very first card in the tarot deck is the Fool. You jump onto this planet and you're a goofball. Who comes down to this planet with no instruction manual with those parents? Excuse me.
Yeah, and if it's not the first, it's always the last, or it's always either the first or the last, right?
It's the zero. It's the 0 card, so it starts there. The number 1 card is the Magician, and what is that? A man or a woman sitting on a table with the 4 elements. You can't enter this reality. You can't become part of this balanced experience with your soul if you don't understand the powers of creation.
Right.
Water. The people that are so sensitive and they cry and they're emotional and they're just staying at home all cuddled up and they have their animals and they just keep wanting to eat and they find themselves all creative, but they don't want to share their music because they're kind of shy and they're scared and they're embarrassed, but they're so loving and they're so emotional. They don't want to leave and they wear their slippers all the time. They're like so happy to be at home and they love that cuddly dog. In the meantime, they're creative geniuses who, at the low level, scare themselves with insecurity because they've got all these gremlins that live inside their head. And at the highest level, they're artists. They're the creative geniuses who allow being downloaded by intuitions and following through and believing in painting and art and music and writing music and poetry and they love talking about death. But they don't talk much, water people. They're like, if you can't track, they listen to you because you're so deep. They only like deep conversations. Okay, cut. Now we get to air. They'll talk about anything. Blah, blah, blah. They're airheads. Blah, 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 blah. They talk all the time. They think all the time. They've got new ideas. They're indecisive. They're watching this class. They're taking that class. They study. They forget where they put their notebook. What day is it? I can't find my phone. I'm so confused. I'm in a relationship. Maybe we should have an open relationship. They're like so crazy. Their minds are so alternate. They're so ETs and spaceships and Billy Carson talking about Kali Yugas and anything will go for them. They're basically, it's bad to say this, but they have a little bit like a slutty energy around their mind. They'll go anywhere with anybody and read anything and study anything, go down any rabbit hole. Now they're all confused. That's the low level. The high levels, they're articulate, they communicate succinctly, they really did reach the conclusion, they teach in bite-sized bits, they have the ability to actually make you feel like you're understood. Because they're so interested. They ask the best questions. You have this. Mercury in Libra, Jupiter in Gemini. You are very intellectual. They're so interested in you that they bring the best out of you. At their worst, they're so confused, they can't even ask the right question because they have too many questions in their head and now they're drinking coffee and now they're having too much sugar and they get all jacked up. You know those people that tap their...
Oh, yeah. Knees tapping. Yeah.
That's air people. High strung. So the water people are quiet, they're home, they're cuddly, they're squishy, they're doing the food, they're eating, they're cooking, and the air people are like, I'm a little confused. Why do we have to eat all the time? They're always asking a million questions. They're super curious. Then the earth people, here we go. Solid, grounded work, construction, building, money, structures, insurance, taxes, keeping everything in order, being on time, being responsible, providing for people, workaholic, cleaning, making sure that the dishes are, that's so funny. If you put the fork in the wrong direction in that dishwasher, how many times do we really care about the fork in the dishwasher? You better clean the car. You better take care of the insurance. You better clean, so they are obsessed with the outer world at their low level, making money, feeling safe, feeling secure, control. When you talk about the white knuckles, that's Earth. You're double Earth. They're grounded, they're stable, they're slow, they're committed, they're loyal, and they don't understand people that don't follow through, that aren't good at what they do. They can't stand it, that are late. So, high level Earth, philanthropist, manifesting monsters. They're generous, they're women festers, they're women that know how to make money. They love beautiful things and how it smells and tastes. At the low level, they're obsessive and they're control freaks and they tell you what to do, and it's annoying because they're always right. And they usually are right. Then we get to the last category, fire. These are the excited people. They jump up and down. They have to go work out. They have really exciting ideas. They love being the entertainer. They love being loud. They love being in front of the room. They have a lot to drink. They have a lot to eat. They're a little bit overweight. They have an incredible desire to be outside. They want to be physical and athletic, and they want to go surfing, and then they want to go swimming, and then they want to play. You're like, wow, is there an off button on that thing? They're just energized bunnies. Loud, blunt, wah. Like, wow. They're the kid that you want to say, whoa, take them outside. So, 4 categories: low level fire, indulgent, ego centered, bossy, opinionated; high level, inspiring, teachers, great role models, great leaders, and really powerful in being able to inspire people to take action. Let's go. So, all of them have a high level, low level. You can't live without water, without crying, without being loving, really caring. You can't live without talking, said the podcast host to the podcast host. I mean, we got to talk.
Yeah.
We have to have relationships. We can't live without people, or it won't work. Can't live without food, earth, money, ground, structure. I love that you asked the earth question. Where did money come from? Said Taurus rising. Taurus rules money. And then you can't live without the joy factor with fire, without an orgasm, without the music, without having a drink, without having a party, without having the let's go for a run. You can't live without the fun factor. So these are required, all 4 of them. But you probably have a missing element. And that's where my book comes in. There's a book on Amazon called The Missing Element. And you just take a test. You don't need to know there's no astrology in the first book. You take a test and you figure out, what is my missing element? You, by the way, do not have a missing element. You're very balanced. I looked at your chart.
That's a bit trippy.
Because think about it, you have water, you're super deep.
Well, that was going to be my question, is that I feel like everybody has a little bit of everything.
No. Some people, believe it or not, they don't have earth. You would never understand this. They're never on time. They don't make money. They get ungrounded and they feel uncomfortable and anxious all the time. You don't understand. You're like, what? Just take care of things. What's wrong with you? Right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you how to take care of things. Make a list.
You're pointing to some of my frustrations with interactive dealings in the cloud already.
Of course, because you're double earth. Not everyone's like you. No. Some people, by the way, can't find their words. Unlike you and I. You have the Jupiter in Libra. You love this. And Gemini. Some people can't find words. And then the problem is it's hard to do relationship and socialize and go to a party. It's like nails on a chalkboard. So no, you are balanced, and not everyone's balanced, and they have to get the book and take the little test and figure out what one they're missing.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that. Very insightful. Is there a space somewhere for, like, is ether the 5th element? Do you hold space for spirit?
I don't really. I don't use it. I respect it. Yeah. I respect other systems. I just don't. The 4 elements is enough for me.
There's enough to work with in the tangible spaces, all of those. Debra, at this particular juncture, if someone is still overwhelmed or skeptical about astrology, what is the best place for them to start to experience its transformative power?
Good question. That's a great question. My suggestion is start with the elements. Like, just get the simple. That's easy. Water, air, earth, and fire. Water's wet, air is everywhere, earth is heavy, and fire's hot. It's kind of basic. Then discover your sun, moon, and rising. There's a free site, astro.com. I endorse their company. Do your chart, and then look at the elements to start with. It's not easy. I hate to say this. My school is the short answer. Come for 6 weeks, once a week, and learn. And
you made it sound super straightforward. You made it sound super straightforward. And we'll put a link to that in the show notes below as well, if that's it. Yeah, and if there was one message you wish the audience member tuning in could take away for their purpose in this lifetime, what would that be if there was just one?
For their purpose, I was going to say that nothing's wrong. I really want you to leave knowing, with Mr. Taurus sitting here, Mr. Calm, echoed by my calm, nothing's wrong. But the message for people knowing what they came here to do is the deepest calling. They say the worst thing that could happen when you die is you feel like you didn't fulfill your purpose. That's the greatest wound in the human heart when they leave here. So it's said. So how do you find out what you came to do? I mean, one, pay attention to your own response. Like you fell in love with doing podcasts, you're doing it twice a week. It's your nature, it's your promise, it's your dharma. And you're a double earth, you're a workaholic. Go for it. But for other people, they can't figure it out. If you can't figure it out, you go to an astrologer and you say, help me remember what my gifts are.
I'm so glad you remembered what your gifts are, even if it was in that car ride in the randomest place.
In the middle of Canada. But see, that's such a distinction. Some of you in this room, not unlike what you're seeing with Amrit, his Saturn return came, hit him on the head. He had a dark night of the mind, and he ended up finding his destiny. He didn't get a vote. He got on this podcast and it was irresistible. But for some of you, it's not so obvious. For me, it was at a very young age. Destiny came and got me. So for you that don't have that clear answer, ask for help.
Debra, I can't interpret your chart. I haven't seen the chart. But what I will say is, goodness me, you're so affirming to be around. And I want to thank you so much for taking the time to share yourself so abundantly and openly here with us today. Like you said, some of my questions are a bit niggly, so thank you for playing the game with me and answering them. And I think, it speaks volumes, this conversation, even if I can say myself, just as a testament to just how much this is your life's work. So thank you for today, but obviously thank you for you, man, the way you're carrying this, the way you're sharing it with the world, even the title of the new book. I don't believe in astrology. It's like, why would you write an astrology book with that as the title? Thank you, Debra Silverman. So just really appreciate you doing you all the way through and through, and encouraging us and supporting us in doing similar. So thank you so much.
That's why I came to Earth. This is why I'm here, and you've really helped me to share my gift. So I thank you right back.
You inspired soul, you made it through to the end of another incredible episode. Touch wood. It is such a blessing to be your brother walking this path by your side. Now, I want to take a quick moment out to thank all of you that are subscribed to the channel. Conversations like this are enabled by your subscription to the channel. So thank you so much for your incredible love and support. Everything you see around here is powered and empowered by your subscription to the channel. So thank you so much again and again for your love and support. To all of you that haven't yet subscribed, please do take a moment. As I'm saying the word subscribe, the button below is lighting up in the colors of the inspired evolution. Please hit the subscribe button, hit that bell notification icon that pops up afterwards. Episodes like this come out twice a week, totally championing love, positivity, and wisdom around the world. And you can help us every step of the way simply through subscribing. Thank you so much in advance for doing so. And with that, to dive in even deeper to your evolution, on screen now, some episodes to take you further onwards, upwards, and inwards. Go on, make your pick, take your click, and I'll see you in the next one. See you there.